to get rid of the old
in and yeah, that's definitely an English phrase. Americans don't say that.
Right.
We know what it means when we say all buses come at once.
Yeah.
It means all the good stuff goes
Yeah.
when you're waiting for hours and hours and you're freezing cold and you can't feel your face anymore, and then all the buses come. But it's a good thing. So you are seeing our new fancy screen. We have the name of this program, The Filmmaker's Life. I have my guest name, Mark Lewis, and my name, Joanne Butcher. So we're getting all fancy around here. But we also wanted to put the page for the people on Facebook Live. We wanted to put the that you can sign up and get reminders about
Cool.
the filmmaker's life. So I want to welcome Mark Lewis today. And Mark is somebody who really specializes in sales and specializes in sales in Africa and the Caribbean and other places. But it's such an amazing specialty that I wanted to have you all get to meet Mark. So, Mark, just tell everybody where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Suffolk, just outside of.
Mark, they
Sorry,
know where Suffolk is.
sorry.
They don't know where Suffolk is.
Yeah, the next county along from London. You have London, then you have Essex, and then you have Suffolk. We have a fairly low coronavirus
Oh,
rating out here, uh,
nice,
fortunately.
nice.
um, and it's quite rural. I was in central London for 15 to 20 years, and yeah, been extremely productive. Been possibly 2020 has been one of my most progressive years. There's been a lot of notable achievements during this year, and having fun making content, helping people to get distribution deals and allow their content to connect to a wide audience, and definitely been achieving that this year.
Awesome. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I know a lot of people, because I talk to filmmakers all day, and a lot of people are still feeling as though nothing is happening, and it's just not true. A lot is happening. But I'm going to wait to get back to 2020. I want to go back to, I like my first question always to be, how did you get involved in this business, in the film industry or the entertainment industry? Because I know you have a lot of work in television. So how did that happen? Were you 5 or were you 25, kind of thing? Where did you decide?
So I always had a vision from very young, from the age of 13 or so, to run an entertainment company, a full service entertainment company.
Huh.
And I got involved in music. Had a very successful music career where I ran loan out record companies for major labels. I managed record producers. I looked after publishing companies, and I sold American music into the UK. I licensed it into Japan. Records were already fairly big hits in the US, and I helped with the marketing and promotion of those same records into into local offices through Universal. In addition to having my own label, I looked after producers, creatives in general, and I was definitely a deal maker. Um, what happened, story short, I think I've actually said this before. I fancied myself as a Wimbledon tennis player.
Really?
Yeah, and I did, and I had an accident playing tennis. I sort of lacerated a muscle at the base of my spine in my sort of 20s, and I didn't really walk for a year and a half. It was quite severe. And during that period of time, I probably became quite friendly with the remote control for the TV because I wasn't doing a lot of moving around.
Right.
And a friend of mine, a TV producer, so I got very much interested into series, the construction of formats, the delivery of scripts, the development of story. And a friend of mine said to me, "Listen, stop moping around. Why don't you come in and work as a music supervisor for our youth and entertainment television channel, which was launching on Sky, which is your equivalent to multiplex of Comcast."
Right.
And I said, "Well, no, I don't really want to work for anything. Thank you, for anybody. I have my own job. I kind of work for myself, and even if I do come in, it's only going to be for 3 months." 4 years later, I was still there and pretty much running the sales and acquisition division. And what was interesting, I went in as a music supervisor, was connecting with pretty much every creative, from motion graphics to special effects to screenwriters, etc.
Mm.
Our budgets were not huge at this network, and we were going, and the advertising that we were reliant on was going through some contraction.
Huh.
Excuse me, was going through some contraction, and in order to stay viable, I had to take on more and more jobs as people were kind of let go. So I ended up doing quite a lot of jobs at this network. But what we did was we took a burgeoning network that was focused on dance, and we sold this channel into 62 countries around the world. So we were carried by sort of 62 multiplexes around the world. And then I saw that I had an affinity not only for television, but for leveraging the power of television, the power of content with brands and with subscribers, and helping to tell stories to content creators. And I kind of realized from then, and it was sort of 2003, that I was never going to go back to creating music in the same way that I did before, because
So
I loved
when
it.
when you were at this company, you started as a music supervisor. You ended in sales and acquisition, but the sales and acquisition was for the whole channel, or was
Yeah,
it?
it was, yeah. I was a director. I ended up becoming a director, and I had a big picture overview of the whole channel and the
Yeah.
way we wanted to drive the audience and who we wanted to connect to with our content and the programs that we were producing.
So by then you were really working already at this juncture of the content and the audience,
Correct.
and then also the brands. So how did that all work together?
Badly, very, very badly. What happened was,
Oh, somebody's unmuted. Let me find.
okay, no worries.
Uh,
Okay, no worries.
no, it's not. Somebody's unmuted. Angela, can you find who it is?
I'll go ahead and do it right now.
I can I can speak a bit louder if you need an answer.
Yeah, I just need to find who's. I'm not finding anybody, but all right. Yes, go ahead, Mark. Sorry about that.
So essentially, we had a budget to produce a long form series, which was our flagship show. And the flagship show was set in North America, Brazil, and in London. And the cable network who were carrying us were having problems with subscribers and problems with finance. So halfway through the series, they wanted to cancel us. They wanted to stop our flagship show, and we had sponsors, we had relationships, so it would have been very, very awkward in order to stop at that point. So the chairman of the channel said, "Well, without the other half of the money to create this series, we're going to have to can the series. We can't go on. And the producer that I was working with said, you know, we could ad fund this series. And this was 2004. Ad funding wasn't really a big term. And we were kind of, you know, in a creek, in a boat without a paddle. And we turned around and came up with a business plan. And we decided that we were going to sell a relationship with our flagship show with key technology brands. And we went around the world to raise an extra $1 million with partnerships so that we could complete the show halfway through after running out of funding. And I suppose we came back, we got the series done, it was completed. And I never went back to funding shows in a traditional way again. I stayed definitely 1 foot between the ad funded space, 1 foot between the pay operators and commissioners, and then, but also finding really creative ways of getting hold of capital to finish projects.
Okay, so there's a sort of independent. I think of that, you know, bringing in that mixture of funding as a way that independent filmmakers are used to working, but maybe that's not the way television usually works. Would that be right to say that?
I think that nowadays there is a huge movement towards funding independent television in an independent way, or an ever-creasing part of television in an independent way. But yes, back then we were definitely mavericks. Most producers feel more comfortable sitting in front of the commissioner and saying, you know, will you invest in my idea? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just that commissioners have a budget which is accountable to the head of business affairs, very often a lawyer or an accountant. Whereas if you go into a broadcaster or a platform or a network or even a cinema chain with a business plan, and you say, I'm going to bring this audience back to your theaters. I'm going to bring this audience back to Netflix. And I think the value of this audience is A, B, and C. They are much more likely to fund your production at a level that feels more comfortable to you than sometimes a commissioner can go, because sometimes commissioners' budgets are capped. That's not necessarily true with the high value, say Netflix docs and Amazon docs and stuff like that. But there are increasingly more and more creative ways of funding funding content.
Oh, now I can't hear him at all. Oops, sorry, I just messed with something on my computer, Mark. I just missed the last thing you said. Sorry.
I was saying that the industry has become more and more maverick, driven by mavericks, and there are more and more creative ways of funding the same content and getting to the same position.
So who are these commissioners that you're talking about? Can you tell us more about them?
I don't have a massive track record with commissioners, because I came in from a completely different perspective. I came in from a distribution perspective where I was wholesaling quite large catalogs. I'm like a kind of Walmart. I'm selling 30 or 40 shows all at the same time, which gives you a lot of leverage with a broadcaster. But what I would say is that if you look at a company like, if you look at a television show like,
is one of the leaders
if you look at a television show like Homeland, something which is
financial ingenuity and innovation, which lead to simple, creative, and responsible decisions.
So I don't see
first international conference
Sorry,
in
let
Dubai.
me just.
300 leaders.
Else is muted.
It is Mark.
This is the power of technology coming from all the way across in England. It's not always perfect. Hold on.
He has to unmute again.
I think he's fixing something because he would mute when. Yeah, Mark, there's something playing in
Hi
your
guys.
TV.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Can you hear me?
I'm trying. Yeah, I have a small technical problem. Let me just get rid of that.
It's gone. Yes, yes, yes. It's gone. Whatever that was, it's gone.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly. And now that sound is gone.
Yeah,
Whatever that was.
personally. Yeah, so I was saying that if you look at a really successful show like Homeland
Yes.
in the US, it started off as an Israeli show. I think it was called Knights of the Realm or something, and it was hugely successful. I think it made sort of $60 million in terms of for local broadcasters in Turkey, parts of the Near East, Israel, and Greece. It's a really high value thriller from a non-mainstream broadcaster.
Right.
Who then took that show, partnered with HBO, retweaked it for a US audience, and made $1 billion. And everybody knows it as the Emmy award-winning Homeland. And I think what's interesting is that Cachette Media, who are the distributors and the original owners of that, make shows on their network for $200,000, but Homeland as a series is probably budgeted near probably $6 to $7 million an episode. So I think the transition from a group of guys with some great ideas in Israel to an Emmy award-winning show on HBO in the US can be plotted really clearly. If you look at Marvel, you look at something like Iron Man, a lot of people forget that, though Marvel is a major studio then, now it was on the brink of collapse when they made Iron Man, and their revenue from their script, from the comics, was under threat. And they raised money from sort of private equity, and they really needed Iron Man to be a success in order to survive and to become the Marvel that they are today. So I think that the path is sitting down sometimes with a studio exec and saying, hey, we've got a great script. Who are we going to get to shoot this? Yeah, we've got a development budget, because development budgets are getting harder and harder to acquire everywhere in the world, not just in the US. And I think that there is no standard route to market. If you can notice that Netflix, I think in the US, has a lot more foreign language features during over the last few months, and that's quite simply for two reasons. There are a number of trends in terms of market segmentation, so they feel as if targeting a niche market, people who might be passionate about golf or people who are passionate about chess is a market that they can dominate with content about something which is specifically relevant to a particular audience and demographic, as opposed to something which is about, say the NFL, when everybody's into football. But at the end of the day, are they passionate enough to renew their subscription, and how can they track those people? So it's about market segmentation and the difference between what they call local and hyperlocal. Local might be, people who are interested in books, and hyperlocal might be people who are interested in reading books about chess. And then you've got things like Queen's Gambit on, and I think that have done particularly well. But I diverge from the point. The point is that one of the reasons that the foreign language features have done quite well is that the coronavirus has not hit some countries as hard in terms of production as it has the US. So now there are risks involved with shooting, i.e. the longer you shoot for, the higher your risk. And if you're looking at a medium budget production, that if a star or somebody central to the cast gets sort of infected, they may have to shut down the production. That's a real problem, because not only do they have to fire particularly an actor, but they have other actors and talent who are also on retainers, and so the whole filmmaking process becomes in jeopardy. Some of these foreign language features have been shot at significantly smaller budgets, significantly compressed time, and so therefore have a higher chance of being completed. So if you have completed content now, as opposed to an idea in development, you stand in a very strong position.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to also now go back to, so you were at this channel for more than 3 years, longer than you planned.
Yeah.
And then was that when you went on your own after that?
Yeah, I had relationships with, they sold the channel to Sky, and I had the option to stay on, or I just felt now was the time to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I did was I delivered a Caribbean cooking show, and it was difficult to get the show commissioned. We went to the BBC. Initially, everybody liked the show, but they felt it was too niche in terms of its offering. So I went to broadcast in South Africa, SABC, and they picked it up. It was niche broadcaster. They put it on their prime time. I've got 41 million viewers. And then I went and I sold it to so-called 30 niche broadcasters around the world. So it had quite, when you aggregate it had quite a high visibility. And then I was off in terms of distribution. So at first I was looking at Caribbean and African content specifically, and then I branched out into sport. This year we'll be distributing parts of the Olympics to some core channels. I distribute part of the English Premiership, Arsenal TV, Real Madrid TV, Tottenham TV, Africa Cup of Nations, and sometimes I've even done part of the World Cup as well, on the sports side. So I'm split quite evenly between general and family entertainment and sport, and scripted, and some factual entertainment, and I have one long form high value drama series in development with Radical Media, and another one, a historical drama action feature period piece again.
I wanted to ask you if you would tell us that story. I know you told us this before when I had you on teaching a class on international sales, but the time that you were selling a show and you wanted to sell it to Uganda. Could you tell that story? Because I think it really illustrates one thing that I'm trying to get across to filmmakers.
I have so many stories from the continent. Was this the one about them wanting to sell to Africa as a continent, and I sold to one country instead of so I was buying crime and investigation series from Canada. So Murder She Solved, Murder She Wrote, CSI New York, CSI Miami, that sort of programming. And I went to the broadcaster and I said that can I buy rights for Uganda? And she said, where is that? And I said, it's in Africa. And she said, well, why didn't you just say Africa in the first place? I said, because Africa's a continent and I can only afford the rights for one country, Uganda. And she said, this is going to be complicated. I said, well, no, not really. It's just like I'm buying it for Brazil, you know. But she said, well, we don't have a contractual arrangement for Uganda. Why don't you just buy the rights for Africa? I said, well, that's like 55 countries, and I kind of only have a broadcaster in one of those. There's 1 billion people there, and I'm just trying to service like 15 million. You know, it's different. And she said, well, what I'm going to do for you, she goes, to make this really simple, you know, I'll sell it to you for Africa, and then you can do what you want. So I was just like kind of a little bit stunned, really. But it essentially, I bought the rights for all of Africa. And for the next 3 years, I was selling that show country by country for a license fee that was really only equivalent to that one actual country. And I think the lesson here is that and probably the reason ITV Global Studios is where it is now and why it did exist before. Shows like X Factor for Simon Cowell making maybe around 60 million from his sales in the UK. But his global sales in 200 countries is around 600 million. So you can have something that your local market doesn't feel is particularly successful, and yet you could possibly find, with some hard work, some diligence, 10 broadcasters around the world who would pick it up. And then suddenly your idea, your film becomes viable because you're in that many countries. And, you know, successful formats will be in 100 countries. But if you have an idea of a film and you're in 10 or 15, you're breaking even on your budget, and potentially you're getting to live and fight another day.
Yeah, I really love that story because it underscores so many things. One of them is that, I love that question. Uganda, where's that? Then, and then just, I don't think that most Americans, you know, think about the Africa market and those 55 countries, and then the idea of selling, you know, piece by piece by piece to different broadcasters. All of these things are just, you know, embodied in that one story. But even, you know, for you, it was just a big lesson in that moment of like, wow, you know, there's a lot here to do to be able to make money that other people are just not thinking about and not aware of.
I picked up the phone and called broadcasters and platforms who I would never have spoken to, because at the end of the day, I just wanted to make some content, get it sold, and move on and make the next thing. But the challenge that we have here is that, you know, the days where your film goes on one particular platform, and the money that comes through from that one platform is sufficient to fund your operation or your village, your vision, those days are numbered. So each of these platforms is giving a much smaller share of the pie. So you have to develop relationships with many more platforms, or have somebody who you have a business relationship with who has those commercial relationships already embedded.
Right. So for the last 18, 20 years, is it, you've been working in this space? And so coming up to 2020, well, you and I met, I guess, in about 2018. And you were working on your own a scripted series. And it's really interesting to me because so many filmmakers today are like, wow, you know, television is great these days. I want to be doing that. But I think you really are somebody who is independently working on producing a true, you know, television series, but in a very independent way. So it's not coming out of a studio. You're the one who is the producer who's driving it. I'm not sure how much you can talk about it, but whatever you can talk about it, I think it would be fascinating for people to hear how that.
I mean, there's a huge momentum, and there's a huge appetite for stories that come from existing IP. Great books, great literary pieces, and we found some great IP about some entrepreneurs at the start of the 20th century, and these entrepreneurs were involved in the farming business and in shipping, and we felt uniquely positioned that we could tell this story. Initially, it was we were looking at a movie, a film, theatrical movie, and then we realized we couldn't tell this story in 2 hours. We would need it spanned over 15 to 20 years. We would need a season, a television. So we shifted our focus to a season. As soon as we did that, 16 episodes, we sat down with Tom Hardy's people in Los Angeles, and they said it's going to be too expensive for you to do it for a 13 or 22-part season. Why don't you do it as a mini series? If it performs well, then you can bring it back for another season. So we then cut our 16 episodes. Excuse me. We then cut our 16 episodes in half, 8 and 8. And we went into development with I suppose a mini studio. I'm trying to keep the independent vision here, but with the way that the show is going, we probably will end up at a major studio, but a fairly significant studio in Los Angeles, and we're 18 months into developing it. We've just employed a showrunner from Canada. The story takes place in the Caribbean, in Boston, and also in Europe, in Italy. So it's a very big story, kind of globally. And yeah, we're at a point where we have great momentum, great interest, and I think that we'll have an amazing pilot by March of next year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working in the development of this project?
Um,
And you don't have to answer any questions you don't want to answer.
no, it's not. It's just that I remember when we sat down with Fremantle, the guys who do American Gods, and they really liked it, and they said, well, we'd like to put this into development. So I said, oh, hold on a second. How long were you in development with American Gods before you got into TV? And I remember the executive's answer, because it chilled, it made my blood run cold. He said, well, I've been here 5 years and it predated me. And I'm like, wow, okay. So you were in development for probably at least 6 years. I'm not very patient. 6 years is a long time to me. I think in the US, the last 4 years has been quite long for everybody. But you know, I think I've been in development between 20 and 24 months to pull this thing together, to look at talent. I definitely see there's another 18 months before we get something on screen.
So when you
one of my executives at the studio, he said to me, he goes, it's hard to imagine, my son who plays sport, he said it's hard to imagine your son playing sport at a senior level now, because my son is almost a professional. And I said, yeah, when we started developing this show, he was just a baby. So,
So
yeah.
when you talk about a pilot being completed by about March, that's still not going to get on the screen. Is the
No,
pilot?
a pilot script.
Oh, the pilot script. Oh, okay. Right, because you just brought on the showrunner.
Yeah.
Right, right. So what were the steps and that you had to take to get, from where you are now to, I mean, from where you started, where you got the IP,
Yeah.
and then to where you are now? What all is involved in that development?
Well, a few people died. I mean,
I'm sorry.
steps they were intense. I felt that the story was very big, so I didn't think one person's vision could carry it. So I put together a mini writers' room, 4 writers who had a vision, and we built a series Bible and 2 episodes over a period of 6 to 9 months that were the framework of what we were going out to sell. We needed these to be able to have serious conversations with talent, serious conversations with development companies and studios. So I put together a writer's room. We worked through the first pilot script, and we also delivered the Bible, which definitely has opened the door at a lot of studios.
Oh, so and then when it came to the point where, how did you find the showrunner that you wanted? What was it that you were looking for?
Um, we went through 20 showrunners to get to this one. We spoke to Maria Calhoun, who writes for Empire. We spoke to Lee Daniels. We spoke to Matt Chiacoca, who does Luke Cage on Netflix. We went through a journey. I remember, Amazon sort of said that they really liked it. They could look at it in earnest, probably late 2023, 2024. I'm like, okay. So a couple of people came on board and they were really into the vision, and then they turned around and sort of said, hey, what if there's a nuclear holocaust in the middle of this and that? Well, no, that's not really the story. So there was some creative divergences. It was about timing. We found a showrunner in the end who has 2 shows, 2 shows on air with the CW in the US, 2 shows on air with CBC in Canada. He's about to be made a showrunner of a 3rd show, so he's very current. He's very current at the moment, I think he's the right, and he had the time as well. Some of the most successful writers are busy. They're not just waiting for you to come along and say, "Hey, I've got something for you to write." Some of them are, booked up for 2 or 3 years. So that was it was. In fact, I could actually say in my whole entertainment career, finding the showrunner has been the single most difficult thing that I've had to do.
And there were also, again, I know that I'm very familiar with the project, but there were also some, I wonder how this worked out, where you had been, the story is set in the Caribbean in the 19th century. So I know you were very, very committed to finding somebody who had a cultural understanding of the Caribbean, of that historic time and things like that. Were you able to achieve that with this showrunner?
To balance that,
Yeah.
the story has ties to the La Manonera, the foundation of organized crime in America, and has deep roots in Sicily. it was important for me that a writer of who was intimately familiar with the cultural nuances of the Sicilians and those crime families that came over to the US was also involved. So it wasn't just a
Right.
great Caribbean writer. It was we wanted people who had an authentic story to tell. We didn't want necessarily an appropriation or some who just had an opinion. Because it was a very, very different time with very different allegiances. So the room of itself will be quite diverse, but the person who nailed the story, we wanted them to have a very strong vision. And funny enough, choosing the showrunner, I remember our first conversation because we'd spoken to a lot of showrunners, and he said to me, I read the Bible, I really liked it. And he said, would you like me to speak frankly about the script? And I said, yeah, of course, you know. He said, I hated your character, your lead character. I didn't believe in him. He said that the character I have in mind is absolutely ruthless. He has no regard for anything except business. And we open on him reading a copy of the Iliad. He's researching his enemies. He's an archetypal kind of good bad guy. And I was like, this is it. This is somebody who wants to take the reins of my story and make it huge.
Right, right. That's great. Yeah, when somebody says, do you want me to speak frankly? The answer needs to be yes. Right. That's great. That's great. So, what was it? He didn't like the character because he was too ruthless, or he didn't like him because he wasn't ruthless enough?
He wasn't ruthless enough.
He wasn't ruthless enough. Yeah.
He felt that to coalesce, to lead, to be a leader in the way that he was in the States and the Caribbean, and some of the things that he did, he would need to be more charismatic and just a little bit more extreme in some of his decision making.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes total sense to me. I mean, already when you're saying it, it sounds to me. I'm like, oh, this is a more interesting character once you move him to that sort of more extreme level. And this story, which is a historic story, and it's set at the end of the 19th century, and this is a ruthless time, you know, in history. I mean, I guess anything in the past is more ruthless than even now, but ruthless time. And so the level of violence and, you know, whether it's state sponsored or whether it's individual or whether it's organized crime is going to be very, very high, right? So now I know that that's, you know, so you're working on that project, and you're also, of course, working on the sales and stuff that you're always doing in Africa and the Caribbean and other markets. What else are you working on?
That's enough.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah, I
yes.
have a sports rights consultancy for general sports entertainment, live entertainment on television. But to be honest, the two scripted drama that I have and the historical fantasy, I see both of those being around for 5 years. Take on a new project typically once every 3 years. I definitely see myself having 5 years worth of fun with those two things, and to give them my attention to ensure that they're driven forwards, I've had to drop a few things.
Uh-huh. Right, right. Yeah, because there don't seem to be quite enough of you to go around, one person to go around. So, I would love to open it up if anybody has any questions. Please feel free. What do you for the whole sort of picture, Mark? What do you call yourself?
Um, uh, I like to think of myself as a catalyst. I don't always come up with the best ideas, I think I've worked with some people who generate pretty good ideas, and I'm able to help them to commercialize their ideas and put it in a framework which is understandable.
Right.
But but you know, I'm a content distributor, digital content distributor, and a content creator at the same time.
So Malkia has a fantastic question. I would love for you to come on video, Malkia, and ask that question. I know you said you have a jumpy connection, but it would be great to hear from you. Can you unmute? Yay. Malkia? She said she has a jumpy connection. Does anybody else have a question? Oh, Yanni, go ahead.
Yanni has to be unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks.
All right, so good to talk to you. Nice to virtually meet you. I believe that Joanne had spoken with you about one of the projects that I was working on, an accidental fire. And listening to you talk about the series and stuff that you had, it actually kind of struck another more interesting note with regards to an accidental fire and where that actually is headed, because that's actually that would actually be the kind of low budget entry into an entire series.
Right.
Not just a film, but like, you know, the goal is to put it out there, establish the name for myself and the work, and take the IP, which is an existing book that already exists, 4-volume novel series. It already exists. We already got 3 scripts that are done as prequel things to it. So to turn that into an actual entire series might be something that's really interesting. And you know, I wanted to thank you for all of the information you put out, because it kind of gives me a little bit of direction with that. And then also wondered if I can connect with you via Joanne after the call.
100%. Coming on an accidental fire, I think you always have to ask yourself, what would the production values be in the movie versus the TV show? Because sometimes if the production values are high on the TV show can actually be more expensive than the movie. Whereas there are times when going down the TV route gives you more opportunities to make mistakes while you're building your content dream. With a movie, you've got to get it right the first time. There's no do-overs. And sometimes, to be honest with you, quite frank, it scares me with movies, because with television, you know, I can sell that show for 2 years. With a movie, you have a short window for Netflix, short window for theatrical, and you have to have great partners who are ready to transact quickly. I can't always guarantee that. But yeah, basically, there's existing IP, always the most amount of ways that you can repackage your content puts you in a much stronger position. And I've had to work on projects that have become something completely different because of that philosophy.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, so I appreciate all that and all your input today. It's been fantastic. And yeah, I mean, I'll try to connect with you via Joanne after, and we can talk about the different way to.
I think Eugene's got a question, Joanne.
Malkia is coming on next. And then
okay, I think I figured this out. I'm sorry. This is the first time trying to do Zoom in transit on the phone. But I'm so I was so happy to get the message about this talk, because as a Black independent maker, mostly doc right now, but other interests and other formats based in the US, who has a real interest, just not just like strategically, but genuinely has an interest in creating an audience amongst, you know, distributors and audiences in Africa, in, you know, English speaking, probably Black world audiences. Is it realistic to think that one-off documentary that's not necessarily reality, you know, or factual, like just like real social issue documentary or kind of cultural documentary has an audience like outside the US?
Malkia, can you hear me? Can you give us
Yes, you can.
so we know what you're talking about with your doc?
Sure. Should I say something? Okay. Sure. So yeah, there's 2 docs I'm working on. One in particular follows a high school choir in DC, but actually a choir that was a big worldwide hit in the 80s that comes together for a reunion, and the inspiring teacher that drove them to success and is now really responsible for the successes they have in their lives now. So it's music, it's kind of cultural history into, you know, a Black urban community and school system. It's people reliving glory days. It's all of that. And, you know, I'm biased, but I feel like, you know, other Black folks around the world who want to see those kind of stories. And I have you're the first person I really know of that is an expert in, you know, Black markets in Africa and other parts of the world. And I'm just so curious, is it realistic for me to think that I can make sales in those types of environments, or is it really just the US story?
I'm going to answer the question in 2 strands. One of the sports companies that I sell content to is called Super Sport Television. They have a market capitalization of $65 billion, which, to give you an idea of size, is the same size as ESPN in the US. They're the 2nd largest buyer of sports in the world outside of PPTV in China. They buy more sports than BBC worldwide. When you're making your content, you have to, as a content creator, you have to think about the whole world as your market, because if you are thinking just about people who look and sound like you could be missing 80% of your market. I want to give you a really poignant example. 6 years ago, if somebody asked me, would I be interested in a Mexican drama only in Spanish about drug lords and cartels in Latin America, and how likely would I be to subscribe at, say, I don't know, $10 a month to watch that? I think my answer probably would have been no. But here we are 6 years later, 7 years later, with Narcos being one of the hugest multi-billion-dollar franchises, which is essentially a niche show in a foreign language produced by a foreign production company, and you almost have to not have a pulse to have not seen an episode of Narcos. And so what Netflix cleverly did is they turned around and they said, okay, you know, we are coming from a let's say a crime drama series, let's say like The Wire, that's done extremely well on HBO from 10, 15 years beforehand. But now we are saying, well, how many people around the world are interested in you know, Pablo Escobar type stories? And that's one circle on the Venn diagram. How many people are interested in, just in California, in Spanish speaking content? And that's another Venn diagram. How many people are interested in the archetypal violence that you're going to see? And that's another circle in the Venn diagram. And what they turned around and they said, well, hold on a second. There may be 1 million people per territory who love this type of content. Now, in terms of America, that's a very small amount of people, a million customers. But if you've got 40 countries around the world and there's 40 million people who like Narcos and they're paying $10, that's $400 million a month. So the day of if you are a golf enthusiast or if you are a long distance swimmer, or if you are somebody who likes African war stories, or you like gospel, there is a global gospel market waiting for you. There is a global swimming market waiting for you. So you just have to identify who the market is.
I hope that was helpful, Malkia. So good to see you on the call.
Very helpful, very helpful. Thank you. I'm gonna go off camera, but I'm listening.
Mark Gordon is going next.
Hi, Mark. Nice to see you. Thank you so much. This has just been such an informative session. You mentioned that you had gone through 20 odd showrunners, and I'm considering working on expanding a project into a series. Why is the showrunner so important, and what do they do?
Okay. First, can I say, Mark, you've got a fantastic first name. I just wanted to put that.
You too.
Thank you. So I had a lot of arguments at the studio about this same question. Let me approach it in two ways. Let me take economics first and then creative second. I went in to make a show that I thought we could make for $800,000 an episode. I walked in, I had a pom-pom in the air. I'm like, we're going to do this. And, you know, the producer at the network said, well, when we look at the union rates, that's just about going to pay our tax bill per episode. And suddenly we went from $800,000 per episode to $1.2 million per episode. They said we could definitely get it done for this. 6 months later, they wanted a particular talent, and they turned around and said, well, we're probably going to need more than 1.7. Then the LA office got involved, and then 1.7 became 3.5. And what I saw was that networks and film finance companies don't like to take risk. Forget what you heard. They don't like to take a risk. They want a sure bet. And a sure bet means a lot of the time they want a writer who they feel, especially in television, because in film, the director can fire the writer, but in TV, the writer can fire the director, and the producer and the showrunner kind of pretty much runs the roost. So essentially, the showrunner acts as an insurance policy for the network or the studio. They take the risk on that guy or that girl delivering a return on their investment because of their experience. Had I gone in without a showrunner, we will be struggling to get something done for $500,000 an episode. With a showrunner, it becomes viable at $2 to $3 million an episode, and the network feel that they have the confidence to invest in that showrunner, and he picks the writing team, and also has the muscle to be able to get talent maybe at below market rate, so it actually fits in the price. So that's it from a financial perspective. From a creative perspective, they want somebody that can inspire confidence with talent. And let's face it, an actor wants to win an award. They want immortality. That's what we're all here for, immortality. And the showrunner technically has the ability to create those words in a way that the actor wants to say it. So you may have the story, you may have the vision, you may have the script, and the showrunner's translating that for the talent that's going to drive your show forwards, and also for the producer and those other key pieces of talent that want to believe in the vision. So they're creating a template. They're Michelangelo with all of the colors, so that the network can feel that creatively we're in the right hands. So financially and creatively, he's a caretaker. He or she is a caretaker.
Great.
Thank you.
Mark, great name.
Yeah.
So Mark, Lewis, we've run out of time. Would you be willing to take one more question?
Yeah, definitely. Eugene's arm has been falling off. He's had his arm up for a long time. So I'll rush through a couple questions, and I'm good.
I want to go with Sean first.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
Sean is breaking.
No, it's not Sean. That's
Oh,
Eugene. Eugene, I'm going to go with Sean first because your video is not, your Wi-Fi is not working. Sean, unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for your time today. Two-part question. The first one is, do you co-produce or get involved with anything made in Africa as far as features or series? And then my second question is on the technology side, in funding or financing, have you looked into the blockchain sector as far as like STOs or DeFi?
Okay. Two really good questions. I don't have the bandwidth to co-produce, but sometimes when people approach me with a project and I know a partner in place, I will put the two of them together and see if they can make some magic. Because I know some broadcasters and I know some producers, I'll just connect the dots. On the technology side, we've built our own streaming box, which can deliver almost near HD quality to mobile, halfway around the world in a quarter of a second with zero latency. I'm not up on the blockchain technology. I do believe it's really valuable, but I'm just not an expert enough in that space to be able to talk effectively about it.
Kafi is calling from Trinidad, so I wanted to give her a chance to ask her question. Kafi, are you there?
I am.
So good to hear from you.
Hi. So, it sounds like your experience is mostly in really big budget productions and large catalogs, right? And I was wondering if you think there's crossover in terms of your distribution experience for micro budget films and smaller catalogs, like let's say 5 to 10 titles.
Kathy, are you from North or South?
Am I from?
North or South?
Trinidad? North.
Yeah, okay, so you're from, okay. So I'm from the South.
Okay. All right,
So,
big up.
Yeah.
Sando.
I specialized in looking at niche content, smaller catalogs, and selling it to large distributors. So I 100% believe that's the model that I work on. I went into large studios and tried to pull the budgets down so I could have more control over the product rather than increasing the budgets. Because when you pull the budgets down, there's more of a chance of you making a margin. Therefore, you want to be able to shoot your second and third feature. If you only break even or you lose money, it's unlikely that the same finances are going to come back again. So I 100%, yeah, if you've got 10 films that you feel passionately about, you pick your market sector, you pick your price, and then you go and you sell.
Okay, so, yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Kafi, I'm going to ask a question on your behalf.
Please do.
Kafi also has some really nice animation pieces. They're Kafi, tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, like 3 to 5 minute pieces that are really funny, and they have this big character called Big Man Dan. And they were actually originally made to address toxic masculinity. But, you know, the Trini characters and, you know, I was just wondering if there's any market for something like that. It's like a series of 6 or 10 pieces that she has.
Is it adults or is it children?
I'd say
it's for adults.
It's adults, yeah.
Harder market. And even with adult or children animation, you need volume. So if it's something that you're passionate about and you have 5 or 10 pieces, you kind of need to get up to that 25 sort of pieces to be able to have a serious conversation, because animation and kids acquisition is sold in a completely different way. And those executives who live in that world do business in a different way. So volume is very important. You have to have a lot of it.
Okay. All right, so I think we're going to come to a close, and I just want to thank.
I did want to put Eugene's question if he's still, if we can hear him.
We couldn't hear him before.
Okay, no.
We can't hear you, Eugene.
Sorry, yeah, Eugene, it's not,
We can't.
Mark,
no.
can you hear me?
It's the Wi-Fi. It's the
No?
width on your Wi-Fi. We can't hear you.
Breaking up.
Sorry. Okay, I just want to thank you, Mark, so much. You guys have no idea how busy this man is. So I just really want to thank you for giving us an hour of your extremely precious time and introducing us to the whole big world out there that basically people don't know about. And so, you know, thank you so much. And I want to invite anybody on the call who is interested in talking to me about working with me and what I do to help filmmakers to reach out to me. I think we put it in the chat. There's been a lot going on in the chat. I can't follow it all. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me, there's a link we put in that you can set up a time on my calendar. And it's so good to have you all, especially my Trinis calling in all the way from Trinidad. And thank you, Mark, again, calling in all the way from England.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Amazing.
Contact details in the charts. And thanks for taking out the time, and stay safe.
Yes, stay safe.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great to see you all here this morning.